What is the International Space Station? The International Space Station, or the ISS, is, well, a space station. A space station is an artificial satellite which is habitable, meaning people can live in it. There have been multiple space stations over the years, but none as big as the ISS. It's also special because it's a partnership between many countries: the United States, Japan, Russia, Canada, and the European Space Agency, which represents 22 countries. The first part of the ISS, the Russian Saya module, was sent up in 1998, and 2 weeks later, the United States Unity module was attached to it. The first crew to inhabit the ISS was sent up in 2000, and the latest pressurized module was sent up in 2016, and that was the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module. The station consists of more than 40 different modules, 16 of which are pressurized, meaning it's safe to be inside them. The ISS is divided in two main parts, the Russian and the US. It also has a section of Japan modules and one European Space Agency module. The main purpose of the ISS is scientific research. It offers an opportunity to study the long-term effects that microgravity and radiation can have on different things like the human body or different materials. These studies are essential to know what would happen were we to travel to Mars or other places in our solar system, or maybe even further. At an altitude of around 370 kilometers, it sits well above the Kármán line, considered the edge of our atmosphere. But even though it's in space, there are still a tiny number of particles from our atmosphere hitting the space station, which slowly drags its orbit down. This is bad because we don't want our big beautiful space station plummeting to Earth and burning up in the atmosphere. And that's why it needs to boost its orbit up with regular intervals, using the engines on the back of the space station from the Russian Zvezda module, or a module that's attached to the back of it. The burn usually takes about 3 hours to make. The ISS also offers a home for satellites that can't be on their own in space. For example, the AMS-02 satellite needs an amount of bandwidth that is too great for it to be alone. It needs to leech off the ISS. The crew on the ISS are exposed to far greater amounts of radiation, which means they have a higher risk of getting nasty stuff like cancer or cataracts. The only thing we can do for them at this point in time is protective shielding and certain drugs. But that's why they're studying it, to find out what we can do for them in the future, and as I said, on longer space travels. The way astronauts and cosmonauts get to the ISS is by the Russian Soyuz, and that's the only way we can get there since the US shuttle retired in 2011. Both SpaceX and Boeing are working on a way to get to the ISS from US soil, with the SpaceX Crew Dragon and the Boeing Starliner. The crew on board do need resupply, of course, and that gets delivered by a bunch of different spacecraft. And sometimes we even want to take something back from the ISS, and that gets done by the SpaceX Dragon or the Soyuz, although the Soyuz has a very limited capability for that. There is some talk right now about decommissioning the ISS in the late 2020s, maybe early to mid 2030s. And I couldn't find out much about it, but I think it basically comes down to the lack of funding. And that's what the International Space Station is. I hope you learned something. If there's anything in this video that I talked about that you don't understand, there's a good chance that I've made a video on it or I'm gonna make a video on it. So you can click the eye up there and you can see a bunch of videos about everything I talk about in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!